our learning target for today is I can solve one-step inequalities involving multiplication and division. So like I said, there is going to be a rule, a special rule for some of these. So I'm going to start with the most basic example so that you can see that nothing fancy is going on in some cases, and then sometimes you'll need that special rule. So let's just start with a super straightforward example. 24 is greater than h divided by 5. Okay. So again, just like the addition and subtraction ones, we're going to solve using inverse operations. So I'm going to put my balance line here. Yeah.
Can we just put like h like divided by 5?
Yeah, that's fine.
Instead of 5.
Yeah. So the opposite of dividing by 5 here is to multiply by 5. So I'm going to multiply by 5 on this side and this side. Okay, so on this side over here, you're left with h. I'm going to bring my symbol down, and then I'm going to multiply over here, and I'm going to get 120. Okay, like I said, super straightforward. We're going to go ahead and graph this, and then we'll just check our answer to make sure we're good. Yeah.
Why are we left with just h if you're multiplying 5 by 5?
Because I'm not multiplying by 5 by 5. Really what's happening is I have h over 5, and I'm multiplying by 5 over 1, and then you could cross cancel the 5s like that.
Okay, yeah.
Yep. Good question, though. I'm glad you asked. All right, so for this, there is no equal to sign underneath that, so it's not greater than or equal to, it's just greater than. So that means 120 is not one of the solutions. So we're going to do a hollow circle here, and h is less than 120, so we're going to shade everything that's less than 120. Now, we do want to just check and make sure that we've shaded the correct side, so I'm going to check it. And I'm going to take one of the solutions from our solution set over here. I'll take 118. And I can see that this is true. So I have shaded the correct side on that. Okay. You guys are good on this, right? Yeah, pretty straightforward. You do exactly like what you would do for the other inequalities, and you solve it just like you would for an equation. Now I want to show you an example that is going to need that tricky little rule. So you have -7 times x is greater than or equal to 42. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to, this particular problem, I'm going to solve it like we normally would, and then I'm going to show you why it doesn't work, okay? So I'm going to do my balance line. I'm going to use inverse operations. I'm going to divide both sides by -7. Okay. And I get that x is greater than or equal to -6. Okay. Now I'm going to graph it, and then we'll check our answer here so I can show you what's going on. Okay. It's a solid circle because of that equal to sign. It tells us that -6 is a solution. And we want to shade everything that's greater than -6. So we're going to shade this side. Okay. Now let's check it out. This time, and really we should always be doing this, I don't know what I was thinking. We want to go back to the original inequality and check one of the numbers in our solution set to see if it works, okay? So our original inequality is -7 times x. So why don't we plug in -4 here because that's part of our solution set. And then is greater than or equal to 42. Well, -7 times -4 is a positive 28. Okay. And 28 is not greater than or equal to 42. Okay. So what we did not work. All right. Now, here's the trick. So I'm going to show you the trick now that we're going to do to make this work. We're going to solve it again. Okay, we'll do it the same way. We're going to divide both sides by -7. That hasn't changed. And you're going to get x and -6, just like you did above. But here's the deal, okay? Let me put a little arrow here. And we're going to write down a rule, a special rule. Okay, when you multiply or divide by a negative number, the inequality symbol will flip. Okay. So negative numbers just do something funky to inequalities, and so it needs to be flipped. So right here, notice that to both sides of the equation, I divided by a negative number. Whenever you multiply or divide both sides by a negative, this inequality symbol is going to flip directions like that. Okay. Now, for whatever reason, this rule really messes with my students. So I want to make sure we're super clear. You're not going to flip it if there's a negative somewhere in the problem. You're not going to flip it if you multiply or divide both sides by a positive number. And you're not going to flip it if you add or subtract both sides with a negative. Okay? It's only when you multiply or divide both sides by a negative that sign flips. Okay? So let me show you another example, and this one will involve multiplication so you can see what it looks like for multiplication. Actually, real quick, I'm going to graph this so that we can see that it now is going to work. Okay. So we're going to do a solid circle at -6. And we're going to shade everything that's less than it. So notice that it flipped the side that's being shaded. And now if I pick something from my solution set, like maybe -8 here, and I do -7 times -8 is greater than or equal to 42. So I'm plugging it back into my original equation, or inequality. This is going to be positive 56 is greater than positive 42, which is true. It's true. So when we flip that symbol, we made sure that our solution was correct. Okay. So one more example, and then I'll have you guys practice a couple of these. You have 70 is less than x divided by -2. Again, we're going to set it up just like we normally would. And the opposite of dividing by 2 is multiplying, or sorry, the opposite of dividing by -2 is multiplying by -2. So I'm going to multiply by -2 here and here. A -2 divided by -2 cancels out. And you have x and -140. Now here's the key. I just multiplied both sides by a negative number. And when I do that, this symbol will need to flip. Okay, so this was our ticket right here. We multiplied by a negative. So anytime you multiply or divide by a negative, that sign's gonna flip. So let's graph it real quick and just make sure that our solution is correct. Okay. Now, in this case, it's going to be a hollow circle because the equal to sign is not there. And then we're going to shade everything that is less than it. Okay. And then we're going to check our solution set to make sure that we shaded the correct side. So I'm going to pick -142. And just make sure that it works in the original equation, or the original inequality. Okay, so when I divide this, I get a positive 41. And 70 is less, or sorry, positive 71. And 70 is less than 71. So that shows me that I solved it correctly and I shaded the correct side. Okay? Yeah, Rhea. It doesn't matter, like, because what's going to happen is when we get to two-step equations, you're going to always add or subtract something and then multiply or divide something. And so sometimes that sign's going to have to flip if you're required to multiply or divide both sides by a negative number. Okay, that's the key. So you would multiply or divide something by a negative number and then do whatever else you had to as well. But as soon as you multiply or divide both sides by a negative number, that sign will flip, and then you carry on with whatever else you needed to do. Sienna.
So what if you multiply by two negative numbers?
By two negative numbers, then it would flip twice,
Okay.
which would then put it right back where it was. Yeah. Okay, so let's go ahead and flip I ran out of room, so I'm gonna flip my notes over. I'm gonna give you guys a couple problems to practice real quick, and then I have one word problem for you to make sure you're ready for your homework tonight.
We can't see it.
Thanks. Okay, so I want you to solve these and graph them. Okay, I'm gonna walk around, so if you need some help, flag me down. just gonna get my stuff set up while you guys are finishing up these problems. Looks like there's still quite a few of you that are finishing these up, so I'll give you like another moment and then a minute or so, and then we have to move on just to make sure we can get everything in before the end of class. Okay, I'm going to start talking through these. I know some of you aren't finished yet, but I think as long as you get through the first two, it'll be good for you. So here we're going to do inverse operations. The opposite of multiplying by -4 is dividing by -4. So we're going to do that here and here. And bingo right there. You're dividing by a negative. And whenever that happens, this sign needs to flip. And so what we're left with here is W, and then 12 divided by -4 is -3. Okay. Well, in this case, it's not equal to, so -3 is not considered a solution, so we're going to do a hollow circle. We'll shade everything that is less than it. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick something from my solution set over here, like -5 maybe. And I'm just going to check and make sure that this works in the original equation. So -4 times -5 is greater than 12. And a negative times a negative is a positive 20. And we would say that 20 is greater than 12. Okay, so then we did graph this correctly. Okay. Next one, I'm going to do the inverse operations for this, and that would be to multiply both sides by 6. Now, people see the negative in here and think automatically that, oh, I'm going to have to flip the sign. But look I multiplied both sides by a positive number, not a negative. So in this case, the sign will not flip. It stays exactly the way that it was. Okay, so J over here, and then this is going to be -120. I'm going to go ahead and graph this. Okay, so we're going to do a solid circle at negative 120. And we're going to shade everything that is less than it, because j is less than negative 120. Now I'm going to pick something in my solution set to make sure that I'm good. It's a little tricky because you're going to be dividing it by 6. And so it might be nice to have something that's divisible by 6. Like if I keep going, I would hit negative 126, which I know is divisible by 6. So I'm going to pick that. Divided by 6. And then this is going to be negative 121. Or sorry, negative 21. All right? Which is true. Okay, this is true. So I know I did it correctly. So in this case, we did not flip this symbol because these were positive. Okay? Last one. We're going to multiply both sides by negative 7 here and here. And because I'm multiplying both sides by a negative number, then I know I have to flip my symbol. Okay. So let me go ahead and add some numbers to my number line. We can graph it. Okay. I'm going to do a solid circle at negative 77 because there's that equal to sign. And I'm going to shade everything that is less than it. Okay. Does everybody understand why I did the shading I did? Okay. How did you guys do on the word problems on your homework last night? Did they make sense? Okay. Because, again, unfortunately, I'm out of time. I could try to squeeze in the word problem if you want me to. Do you guys want me to try a word problem with you? Okay. So just make sure you ask me questions about the word problems from your homework if you have them. I'm going to put the table of contents up here so you can update it. What? Oh, this is really annoying. Somebody is trying to add on to